To start our journey of discussing the Inforiver vision, let's go ahead and look at the reporting features. We'll start by looking at the various navigation options. I'm going to come up to the Home ribbon and select Navigation. Now the default navigation experience, which is Hierarchy, condenses all levels of the hierarchy within a single organized column for both the parent and children levels. Additionally, you can also choose more of a classic table layout, which will take all levels of the hierarchy and separate them out into individual columns. And if you want to further enhance the table layout, you can also choose Stepped instead, which will then add subtotal rows, as you can see below. And last but not least, if you come up to Navigation and we select Drill Down, you'll be shown one level of the hierarchy at a time, and if you hover over any of these, you'll see an option to say Click to Drill Down. And if we select one of these, it will take you to the next level in that hierarchy and continuing down to those lower levels. And additionally, if you have any visuals on the page, this will also apply a cross filter to those other visuals. Now, besides the navigation experience, you also have quick and easy ways to change the look and feel of the report using templates. If we come up to the Home ribbon and select Templates, so far I've been using the grid layout, which has the option of default and spreadsheet, which are fairly similar to each other. You have more of a clean and simplified look for the financial options as well, for simple and standard. And if you come down to Performance, you'll be given an option for 5 different types of IBCS certified templates from T1 through T5. That provides various layouts and designs to analyze your data graphically. When it comes to navigating the table itself, there's a lot of options for both the column and row level hierarchies. Just like in Excel or Power BI, you have the option to have the expand or collapse icons over here that will let you open and close those levels of the hierarchy. Additionally, you have a menu over to the right, which if you open it up, you have options for expand, collapse, or hiding any of these as well if you don't want to show that level as an option for the users to drill down. So I can very easily collapse an entire level if I want to. We also have expand and collapse options up here as well for columns. As an example for Canada, if I open that up, you can see a lower level of the hierarchy now being displayed, with its own dedicated menu as well for any additional options for expanding or collapsing any of those levels, as well as being able to sort the data. Another really great feature is the ability to reorder rows. If we come over to AdventureWorks here and drag this to the top, you can see that it took both the parent and the child nodes and moved them instantly up to the top, and everything below that also migrated with it. In addition to all the row and column options that you saw here, you also have a Manage Columns option. If you come up here, you can see that all the columns are listed in here with corresponding icons to indicate which ones are coming from a data source and which ones have charts applied, plus an option to do a wildcard search for any of the fields. You can also come over to the gear icon, which gives you additional options to choose the aggregation types, the width, or if you wanted to lock the columns as well. Now let's discuss some of the styling options that we have. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to turn on the rail option. And as an example, I'm going to highlight the top row here for all, and I'm going to go ahead and add a border to it. Let's add a thick bottom line to this. On top of being able to make edits to the rows, we can also do it to individual cells, either at the category row level, the cell level, or the header level as well on the columns. Now another great feature is if I wanted to take the formatting that I had onto this cell, I can come up to the Format Painter. I can also select another entire row down here, which will apply to that whole row. And additionally, if I want to apply it to all other rows in that same level of the hierarchy, I can select Apply Format to Level, which you can see with 2 other rows automatically apply that to the entire table. Additionally, if I wanted to, I could choose to hide any of the rows by selecting the eye icon here. And you'll now be given a down arrow indicator to show that you've hidden rows with the option to also show all rows again if you wanted to unhide them. You also have an option to choose the row height for the entire table itself, or if you wanted to individually make any one of these rows taller, with the option to apply various alignments both horizontally and vertically. Plus, you also have some intelligent column fit options where you can either choose to fit to header, to fit to the content, or applying your own manual width, which if you select this will open back up the Manage Column window again. Continuing through the ribbon up here, we also have a lot of different options for number formatting. If we come up to the option called Quick Format, we'll notice that right now it is set to measure level, which means that each of the column headers will indicate what scale it is at because the scale is set at the measure level. If I was to select Uniform, you can observe how the column headers have that information removed, and now it is in the table header itself up here in the upper left. Making one more observation, if we were to change this to Auto, we can now observe that each individual cell has its own formatting and scaling applied to it based on the size of the value. And at this point, we could even reduce the numbers down and round it up to the nearest decimal. So one more, there we are. And now that we've configured our numbers a little bit, we also have additional options to come over to the totals here under Analyze, and we can choose to show the row or column totals. Additionally, the Positions option down here at the bottom will open up a menu that lets you configure any of the totals to either include them at the top, bottom, left, or right of the table. and also options to enable row subtotal split. If I turn this on, a dedicated total row will now show up for each of the subcategories. And similar to the Excel environment, we also have the option to freeze the total, which as I can scroll down now, you'll see that the all row stays static at the top. Another really useful Excel-like feature is the ability to group columns or rows. As an example, let's go ahead and select all of the variance columns here. I'm going to come up to Group, and I'm going to name this Variance Columns. Select Apply. Plus, just like any other cell, I can choose to apply formatting to this grouped header if I'd like to. I can go ahead and set this to center alignment. Plus, I can use this feature for rows as well. Let's go ahead and select a couple of rows, come back up to Group, give this a title, and I can also choose where to put the new group, either at the top or the bottom. Let's select Apply. Now we can see the new group appearing here with the ability to drill further down into that hierarchy. Last but not least, over in the Actions section, there is an option to export in Excel. We will get to that later during our Analyze section. We also have redo and undo options, plus options to reset formats, notes, or all applied changes in the table. Plus an option for best fit, which will fit to the data as best as it can for both row height and column width. Coming over to display, we do have a lot of different options in here when it comes to configuring the report. One really great feature is the ability to easily choose between light and dark modes for both the toolbar and the theme of the table itself. With most of the menu options split up between General, Hierarchy, and Numbers, another really great feature if we come over to Hierarchy is the option for ragged hierarchy to display or not. If we turn this off, notice that companies that do not have a subsidiary are now showing blank rows. So having this as an option built into the tool can be really useful when dealing with ragged hierarchies. Let's finish off our reporting features by talking about various aspects of pagination. Come up to the Advanced ribbon. One thing we have an option for is configuring between single page or multi-pages. If you do multiple pages, you have an option to choose where the breaks are, either by various breaks on the categories and the rows or the categories on the columns, with an additional option to choose a section break if desired. And the navigation experience to go between the pages is located in the bottom right. As you can see here, as I click through these, I can go either to the first, to the last, or in between any of the pages. Additionally, I can come up here and select header and footer, which will give me many different options to configure the look, the styling, and the data contained within the header itself. Plus, if I come over to header or footer presets and select that, there's a lot of quick and easy to use templates that can include titles or even KPIs. As an example, if I selected KPI and close this out, the header can include cards that are attached to the data and that even include conditional formatting, plus an option to add a company logo if you desire. Last but not least, if we come back to Advanced, select Reports Plus, this is a great environment for configuring presets that will allow you to create statements or invoices if you plan to do any kind of printing or PDF export of the data itself, with many different templates in here designed to suit your needs. Continuing the Inforiver vision journey, let's now discuss visualization features. Inforiver delivers a lightning-fast way to build visualizations inside both tabular and matrix data, and it comes with a wide range of in-cell table and matrix visualizations with interactive menu-based navigation and one-click customize options for business end users. You can see here a great example of a report that's been customized with a lot of different visualizations for quick and easy analysis, with many different chart types present. So let's review what's available in Inforiver and create some of these visuals. To start with, we're going to talk about some of the quick format options we have up here. By default, the calculations will be formatted at the measure level, meaning that each measure will get formatted individually. Currently, all of our calculations are being formatted at the thousands level, as you can see in the column header. If you change this to uniform, you'll see that that formatting indicator has moved from the column headers now to the header footer at the top, where a universal scale has been applied to all calculations. You also have a few other options in here to automatically format each cell individually, which will move the formatting into the individual cells. Or you can also use the native format that was provided by the measures in the actual dataset. And when you're not using the IBCS templates, you still have access to all of the automatic variance columns that were created. If you come back up to Manage Columns, let's go ahead and turn on the values for Plan and Forecast. I'm going to start by selecting Sales and Forecast column here and come up to Conditional Formatting. And one great visualization tool is the ability to add classification markers. So I'm going to come down here, select this one, and I would like this to show both for values and totals. So I'm going to select that, come down here and delete some of the rules. Because my goal is I would like a down arrow for negative and an up arrow for positive values. So change these two, select Apply, and let's scroll over and see the changes that we've made. I can also choose the icon position. So I'm going to go ahead and move that to the right of the data. And again, select Apply. And now close out of this. And I'm leading up to showing you a great feature called Blend. But before I do that, I'm going to come over to Sales. I'm also going to add some conditional formatting of data bars as another visualization and select that. And again, close out of this. And now with my Sales column selected, I'm also going to select Sales minus Forecast percentage. I'm going to come up to Advanced. I'm going to select Blend. Let's give this a title and select Create. Now what this has done is blended the two columns together, adding the sales value on the top and then the sales and forecast, including the KPI icon on the bottom. Now what's really fantastic is if I come up to the home ribbon and format this value at all, I'm going to actually drop the size down for sales minus forecast percentage, and I'm going to italicize it. You can also see those changes now reflected in the new blend column. Additionally, I can take these two original columns and now hide them since I have a new combined column for blend. And I'll take this and move this over to the far left. And I can even resize it if I want to. Now it's important to note that blend will take most of the conditional formatting options that you have up here, but it won't take any of the charts themselves if you were to blend those on something where you've added a chart. Now let's actually explore the chart section. I'm going to come to sales minus plan, and I'm going to come up here and add a traditional bar chart. And as soon as you add any chart type, you'll have a customized ribbon that will let you further configure it. As an example, we can actually turn on bar overlap, which will increase the size of all of the bars and then overlap the data label. And when you're working with percentage values, such as sales minus plan percentage, those work really well with lollipops. And you can see that that is the only option actually given to display as a chart type for this one. So I'll select that, and again, select a variance. And in this case, the lollipops aren't quite big enough, so I can again come over here and choose to resize it. And it'll give you a prompt saying that universal scaling will be disabled, so let's go ahead and select yes for that. And if you come up to customize again, you also have a powerful analytics feature to add to this, which is the ability to customize outliers that fall above or below certain thresholds. Let's actually go ahead and enable an outlier, and I'll put a negative threshold of 15%. Select apply, and there you go. You now have an arrow that can indicate any values that are below that threshold that you set. Let's add one additional chart type. I'm going to come up to sales and forecast, and I'm going to add a waterfall by selecting this and selecting a colored waterfall, and again resizing this. Coming back to the Customize ribbon, one of the waterfall's powerful features is the ability to include a continuous axis that can navigate between parent and child hierarchies. And as you can see now, scrolling all the way down, it's one continuous set between the waterfall for every single value. And one other thing that's important to mention is with any of these visuals, you have an option for axis configuration to show the y-axis if desired. And all of these visuals work very well with the hierarchy controls. If I was to come over and collapse this level, you can see the calculations now calculating and summarized at the subtotal level. But you can also choose to disable that if you need to by coming up to Display, going to Numbers, and choosing where to show the totals for charts. For visual configurations, there's also two other very useful features. One option is the ability to control the row height. If you come up to here, you can increase that, which will help you better see each row for the visualization. Additionally, if you wanted to configure the width of any of the visual columns, you can come up to Manage Columns, use the Advanced section over here, and then you can set the pixel width for any of the columns here. Another really useful charting feature is the spark line. I'm actually going to select sales, and because I have month and year on my column axis, I'm given an option for the spark line. I'm going to select that, and you can see that we have 8 different options for our spark lines. I'm going to do a traditional spark line for line linear here, and one really powerful feature of the spark line for analysis is the option to turn on scale bands, which creates 4 quartile bands. And you can observe the changes here depending on the scale that you have set, if you have individual, by level, or universal. There are also some really valuable comparison visuals if you wanted to compare 2 sets of values, such as sales and forecast. I'll come up here, and you have 6 different options when comparing either 2 values, 3 values, or a series of other comparison visuals. Let's start by using the IBCS bullet. And this chart can be incredibly useful because it normalizes the goal line and compares everything to either above or below that threshold. Selecting this and coming up to the Customize ribbon, it gives you the option to choose between any of the 6 different types of 2-value comparison charts, plus a lot of other configuration options, whether or not you want to show the marker or even additional variances or targets. Additionally, I can even come and add a third comparison by having the overlapped bar, in this case, set to plan. Similarly, if I wanted to compare 3 different values with each other, let's do sales, forecast, and plan. Come back up to here, and you can select any of these in the 3-value section. And even after it's created, again, you can select the column header, come up to Customize, and change it to any of the other chart types for 3-value comparisons. Another great one is the bullet with marker, which actually gives you an option for comparison bands, which can be configured to increase the number of bands or change the color type. Let's again select sales and forecast, come up to here, and let's explore the other section. We have 2 types of stack charts depending on the type of data that you have. We're going to use the dumbbell plot here to compare sales and forecast. Again, selecting that column, coming up to Customize. When you're wanting to do a variance comparison, you have a few options available. You have the dumbbell plot, you also have the range plot, or the arrow plot as well. And if you want to add a third value to compare between the two, you can use the dot plot. And with this one, you can also configure the marker type as desired between a circle or a line. Let's continue our journey of the Inforiver vision by now discussing the analysis features. To start with, we're going to look at the Analyze section up here on the Home ribbon. I'm going to start by coming up to Top N. I'll keep it to the default to apply a top 5 filter by subcategory and to show the rest as others. You also have an option to add additional top n filters using the Add Rule button up here in the upper right, which will combine them with an AND statement. Let's go ahead and select Apply, and you can see that there is now an Others row that has been added with the count of the children below it for each of the categories. Also under the Analyze section, you have an option for something called OmniSearch. And as an example, I will search for a value of 132. You can see that it will highlight the value in the cell on the table and also display an option of how many of those values will exist across any of the pages. If I actually tab through this and go all the way to the last value found, you will now see in the lower right that this was found on page 2 out of 3. Now if I come up here as well and search for a string value, you'll see that it has the ability to search across categories either on rows or, if I wanted to, in columns as well. Additionally, besides searching, you also have an option to do filtering, both basic and advanced, from the filters section in here. Let's just go ahead and open the advanced section. Now when applying a filter, you have an option to apply those to either the column or row categories. Additionally, you can also apply them to any of the measures as well. And depending on the data type, the condition comparisons here will change. And one unique thing to Inforiver is the ability to add filter groups. If I was to create a group, I would actually be able to set up multiple conditions inside of the group using an AND statement and then combine it with an OR statement as part of another filter that is outside of the group as well. Now let's discuss some of the analytics options within conditional formatting. Similar to the percentage, if I wanted to highlight the sales minus prior year sales to have red for negative, I can select the column, come up to conditional formatting, go to quick rule, and I will set that to negative, and apply this to both the values and the totals, and select apply. And now we can quickly identify where the negative values reside. Plus, there's one really unique feature to Inforiver where any of these formatting options can actually be applied to either the row headers or the rows themselves. Let's close out of this and apply another type of conditional formatting. I can come back to conditional formatting and I'm going to go to classification, and let's go ahead and set a text category for this. I'm again going to select values and totals to apply to. I'm going to come down to the bottom and modify the rules a little bit. I'm going to reduce these now, just having 2 sections. So minimum to the number 0. I'm going to call that negative. And this one is going to be set from 0 to max, and I'm going to call this positive. Select apply, and now we have a binary flag for either negative or positive values. This can be useful because we can now come and close this, unselect the column here. Now if we come up to group, we'll notice that it's actually saying that it's not available to apply when you have a top n. So let's first clear our top n here. I'm going to get rid of that, reset it. There we are. Now I can go to group, and notice that I have an option to apply that segmentation that I just created for the positive and negative binary flags. And what that will do is create new group hierarchy rows that will automatically bucket all of our negative values and all of our positive values based off of the calculation we based the conditional formatting on. Another really powerful feature of Inforiver is the ability to export your data. On the Home ribbon, if you come up here under Actions, you'll see that there's an option to export Excel. Now, if you want additional configurations for your export, you can come over here to the Export ribbon, and you have 2 primary ways to export. All of the options over here on the left will let you export to PDF and configure how you want that to look as far as page size, scaling, orientation, margin, or whether or not you want to export the entire matrix or even selected columns. Additionally, if you want to export to Excel, you have a few options in here to export. The hierarchy display, if we open this up, the default style is same as visual, which is a what you see is what you get scenario, so only the data visible in the expanded hierarchies that you would have into the table itself will show up. You also have some options for flat table, which will essentially export all of the hierarchy rows without any additional options to expand or collapse them, or you can export a collapsible table. And in addition, if you come over to advanced and we were to add some breaks, as an example, I'll add a page break by country. Now let's go ahead and come back to export. I'm going to set hierarchy display as collapsible table and come up to export as Excel. And now I will go ahead and save this file and open it. Now with the file open, we can make a few observations. Notice that we have the hierarchy controls over here on the left where any of the levels can be individually expanded or collapsed. Additionally, the conditional formatting, such as the cells here, automatically came through as well. So font color, background color, and even data bars will actually come through in the export. And then those breaks that we added for country are down here at the bottom. So each country now has its own separate tab in this Excel workbook. There's also a variety of other analytics features under the advanced ribbon. I'm going to come up to the advanced ribbon, and let me show you how to apply a vertical analysis using the Smart Analysis feature. We'll first start by selecting a cell with data, come up to Smart Analysis, and let's select Contribution. That will add a new column called Income and Service of Other over here. I will go ahead and move that over, and now we can do a quick comparison of the values and what the contribution of this is versus other rows, where you can see that this value of 68 billion is about 90.75% of the 74 billion here. Additionally, you can flip this around, and instead of doing contribution, you can select variance, which now instead of the 90% will show you that remaining 9%, where this is 9.25% bigger than the 68 billion here. Another thing you can do is invert the signs and values of any of these rows. As an example for product, if I was to select this here and select invert, observe that the entire row has now flipped all of its values and the subtotals themselves have changed as well. Additionally, if you were to flip the sign at the total or subtotal level, all children underneath them would automatically have all of their signs flipped, and this would apply to any current or future children under those parent categories. And depending on if you want the sign change to impact the subtotals or totals, there will be an option in the display settings on the home ribbon to configure whether or not the sign change will impact either of those. Some other great features under the advanced ribbon is the option for quick formulas. If I come up here and select quick formula, you'll see that we have an option between 6 different quick formulas that we can apply, including running totals, contribution percentages, lead legs, and rankings. Let's go ahead and apply an overall ranking calculation. It will ask us to base it off of a measure. I will base this off of sales, select create, and now you can see it added a quick and easy ranking of all of the subcategories against each other for the entire table. In addition to quick formulas, you also have an option to do a custom formula measure over here. And you have two options of where to apply it to. Visual measure will apply to each of the categories. In this example, we have countries on columns up here at the top, and that is applying it to each one of them here. Or if you scroll all the way over to the right, and then we did a visual column, it will apply one new column here with a new country item at the very end of the table. Let's go ahead and apply a visual measure. And in the formula bar, you're given many options to reference parts of the data, as well as functions that can help you do various calculations. In this example, we're going to keep it nice and simple. I'm going to use sales here, and I'm going to change the row aggregation type to average, so I can have an average sales column, and I will name it appropriately. Select create, and you can see at the subtotal and total level that it has taken the average of all the values below it. Now, in addition to adding columns, we also have multiple ways to insert new rows. One option is we can come up to any of the rows here, select the little icon over to the left, and it will give us a menu with an option to insert either calculated, static, or contribution rows. Now, there's a fourth type of insert row that we have an option for. If we come up to the advanced ribbon, select insert rows, we also have something called a template row that we have an option for as well. This is a really useful feature if you want to repeat the inserted row across all of your categories. If you actually take a look at our child leaves over here on the left in our hierarchy, you'll notice that these subcategories repeat. So I'm going to select template row, and you can see now highlighted over on the left that this new row will repeat for each of the country parent categories that we have in this table. I'm going to give this category a new name, and using the autocomplete in the formula bar, I'm going to add the categories of cell phones, cameras, and camcorders together. I'm going to select cell phones from this drop down here, and then add cameras and camcorders together as well. Since this is a combination of data that already exists, I'm going to exclude from subtotal, which also excludes it from charts by default. Select create, and you'll see that that now created a repeating row, adding those two categories together across all of my different countries as a parent category. Now, instead of a template row, if I had done a standard insert row option, observe what happens when I select a cell and see what the formula bar shows you. Notice that just like Excel, it will show you the reference points of where this data was derived from. Now, additionally, if I wanted to make a cell edit, I can come to any of the cells and double click here, which will open up that formula bar at the top. And if I wanted to make an adjustment, as an example, increase this by 20%, you can see that it added an edit icon to the left of it. Plus, in the upcoming enterprise release, any edits like this can be configured to be written back to a relational database such as Azure. Plus, if at any point we wanted to change the aggregation type, we could come to any of the columns. As an example, average sales, I could select this, come to aggregation, and change this to something like standard deviation, visible rounding, or min or max. Let's go ahead and set it to minimum, and then I can rename the title. And plus, as you add or create various calculations, you have an option to choose the set versions up here between any of the prior year, plan, forecast, or actuals as well, with an option to quickly and easily open up the templates menu from here. And the last feature I want to quickly mention for the Analyze section, as an example, if you have a data set with a single value of data, in this example, sales, and you have on columns fields like current year and prior year or actual fixed years such as 2022 or 2021, you can come up to the Manage Column section and select over here, Set Column as Measure. And now with this set, this gives you the option to come up to here and be able to set various options for bullet charts and other things to compare the two values together. Continuing our Inforiver vision journey, we will now discuss auditing and notes features. While Inforiver brings Excel-like simplicity and flexibility to Power BI in terms of visual calculations, data entry, and edit capabilities, it goes one step further by tracking visual level changes to the report for complete data provenance and governance. Inforiver also allows notes to be placed in many locations, including cell, row, and column headers, which is much more granular than Power BI. We're going to start by looking at Audit, and to get a thorough understanding of its features, we're going to start with a blank Inforiver visual. I'm going to come over to my Fields pane and populate it. I'm going to put my brand subsidiaries hierarchy on my rows, and then I'm going to add my sales, my prior year sales, my plan, and my forecast. And even these basic changes of adding the fields to the wells can be observed when we come over to Advanced and go over to our audits log, where you can see that the measures that were added to the wells are captured in here. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to a completed report where we've added a ton of other things that can be captured in the audit log as well. Now we can see a build with a few more changes made to it. Let's start by navigating the audit log a little bit and exploring some of the interactive features. We can see that the top item up here was that a measure label was changed to forecast. We'll actually hover over this and select it. It will apply a filter up here at the top and also indicate that this forecast column here has two items in the audit log. One where the name was changed and another one where it was added. Additionally, as you hover over each of these, notice that you can individually delete any of the audit log options, or you can also reset all of them. I'll also mention that you can export these if desired to do further analysis in external tools. Now, one other really great feature is with any of these, you have an option to click the comment, which allows you to add comments to review at a later date. Let's go ahead and clear back out of this filter again. You can also observe other changes, such as forecast measure was removed here. Again, anytime you see one of these hover options, that means that if you click it, it will both apply a filter in the audit log and also highlight the area in the table that that change was made. In this case, there was a cell edit to change the value to 4 million. Additionally, you can use the table as a filter for the audit log as well. Let's come over here and select one of the rows. Coming back to the audit log, you can see that there are two changes recorded. The first one down here is that a row reordering happened where the original position was 7 and it was moved to the current position of 5. Additionally, up here at the top, there was a row group added for all of these called No Subsidiaries. Clear out of this again. There's also a wildcard search option to be able to search within the audit log for any specific values. And there's some advanced search options. If you come up to here, you have multiple options to be able to search by type, just audit items related to data editing, or audit items related to formatting, with the addition to also filter by date range as well. Plus a really nice way to filter to just logs that have comments. Next, we're going to showcase notes, and they can be added either at the column, the row, or the cell level. To add a note, we'll come up to the home ribbon and select Notes, select Add a New Note, type in a comment here, assign a priority color. I'll go ahead and assign yellow to this one, select Save, and a symbol will appear next to this to indicate that there's a comment here, and if you hover over it, you'll also get a tooltip showing the comment. You can further expose the comments by coming up to Notes and turning on the footnotes section, which will show all added comments at the bottom. To note, all these comments are added directly into the model for both the standard and the professional edition. You can also further configure your notes by coming up here, go into Settings, and you can choose the type of indicator display, either numbered, lettered, arrow, or asterisk, and a few other settings to configure as well. And last but not least, you also have an option to enable or disable a notes column, which gives you a column over here for remarks, where you can type in notes for the entire row. In addition to adding notes to either the cell or remarks column, you can also add it to the column header or row headers. As an example, if I came up to Australia, selected notes, we can add another note here. And when you select Save, and as you can see over on the right here, it adds an additional icon to indicate that there's a comment that's been made on this column header. And we have the same option for any of the rows over here in the row headers as well. If I was to select Wanderlust and go ahead and select Add Note, go ahead and add an additional note here. And when you select Save, you'll see that it added a note for the entire row itself with the indicator over to the right of the row header. Continuing with the Inforiver vision, we'll now discuss the forecast and simulate features. The manual input feature is a great way to easily add budgeting, forecasting, or plan type data. To start, we're going to come up to the Advanced ribbon. We're going to select Manual Input, and let's rename this to Plan. Now, because I want to add my calculation to each of the quarters, I'm going to use the visual measure versus the visual column, which will just add a grand total and a new quarter at the end. I'll keep my aggregation type to sum, but there are other options available. And we're going to keep Distribute to Parent turned on, as you'll see in a second. So let's go ahead and select Create. Now to start with, I'm going to come up to the cell for the All and Grand Total section. And because my grand total for actuals is about 11.7 million, I'm going to create a plan of 15 million. And by default, it will distribute this value to the necessary parent and children equally. But we can also come over here, go to Distribute, and like I mentioned, the default was equally, but we also have an option to apply a trend to columns or rows, which we'll get to in a second. For now, we're going to come over to Distribute by weights of, and I'm going to select Sales. What that did is took the weighted percentage of my actuals over here and then applied that to my plan value accordingly based off of the 15 million total that I had. Now I also want you to pay attention to the colors as well. The purple is where the data is being derived from, and the yellow is where the data is getting populated. Now it can additionally come to any of these subtotals. As an example, if I wanted to change this to 6 million, I can use cell editing to change that, and I can also make those changes to any of the children as well if I wanted to make that change here. Notice the icon also changes as well. If I wanted to do, again, a distribution to columns, I have the equally and apply trend option here. I can also choose by weight of and take any of these categories, as an example, computers, projectors, and screens, and I can take the value that came from here and then apply it to this cell. But we're actually going to do a trend application. I'm going to come back up to the 15 million now that I have the weighted values that I want in this grand total column. Come over here, and we're going to come down to apply trend to rows. Now I'm going to select a 19% trend increase. Now let's pick a row as an example. What it's done here is it's taken this total of 6 million, and then it has created a base value here, and then added that percentage increase across these remaining quarters to then, again, come back and result in this 6 million. And that did that for every single row and value between Q1 and Q4 in this table. So you can see as a two-step process how quickly and easily I'm able to create a total value, use this to distribute by the weights of the sales amount, and then immediately come back and distribute this across my rows using a trend increase. And the last thing I'll mention as well as another feature is if I selected any of these cells that are outside of the grand total, the icon is once again changed, and now I have an option where I can copy equally to all of the other cells, or for this row, I can copy equally until last, which will then copy, as you can see highlighted, these remaining 3 cells with that same value, and it also again rolled back to the grand total and up to all of those other values related to it. And one last very important thing to mention. If you are using the Enterprise edition of Inforiver, you have the ability to write this data back to a database. To do that does require some setup, which can be configured if you come up to the Export ribbon, select the Write Back option, which will then prompt you to log into your Office 365 account to configure Write Back to an Azure database. Besides the manual input feature, another great feature for forecasting is the ability to add and adjust simulations. To start, we're going to come back to the Advanced ribbon again, and this time we're going to select Simulate, and we're going to start by renaming this to Forecast, and we'll have an option to choose what the simulation will be based on. In this case, we'll keep it on sales because that's the only other measure in the table right now. We can configure whether or not we want it to display as positive or negative, whether or not we want to show a slider, which we'll keep enabled as you'll see in a second, and then we have an option to choose by how much of an increase or decrease we want to be able to adjust the value range by. Now let's go ahead and select Create. Now to start the simulation process, I'm going to come up to the All category for Grand Total and select that cell, and notice how a slider appears over here on the right. Let's go ahead and adjust this up by 18%. And to start with, because I applied that to the All and Grand Total cell, that applied it to all of its related leaf nodes underneath it. But I can continue to come down and make adjustments to any of these other ones. I can adjust at the subtotal level if I wanted to do a negative 11% here, or adjust any of the leaf nodes below any of those as well. And notice when I make an adjustment at any lower level, it automatically rolls up to the levels above it as well. In addition to using the slider, I can also come in at any of the cells and edit them by double-clicking and then typing in a new value. And again, that adjustment will then roll up to any of the subtotals and grand totals. And as an example, if we were to refresh the data and any of these values were to change, I'm going to go ahead and manually adjust one of these so you can observe the changes. Notice how the simulation value associated with it does not change, but the percentage for that simulation value in comparison to the original value does change. Also observe if you come over and hover over the percentages, you will be given information on both the impact, baseline, and simulated value for further analysis. But overall, you can see how easy it is to create quarterly or monthly forecasts with Inforiver and make fast adjustments. And you can use this data for quick and easy variance analysis by coming up to Set Version, declaring that new forecast value as your forecast, and then coming up to Templates to be able to quickly and easily apply variance analysis to do further investigation into your data.